Salutary, and salutations, friends. It is Ray. I'm here with a solo pod today to talk about the Jokic injury and some of the implications and how that dovetails with what I think some of the weaknesses are on the team and how that diverges with some of the weaknesses are on the team and what Denver can do to make it through the next month, 2 months. So, good to hear from you. If you want to follow me, you can do so at Rayvon Hackshaw, and you can find the podcast at Nuggets Wave on YouTube as well as on podcast platforms. Thanks for following us, and let's get into it. First question of the day. So, it's the holidays. We're going through a lot of food. Also, happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy Hanukkah. Whatever you're celebrating. I believe tomorrow will be New Year's Eve. So, whatever you're celebrating, hope you have a good one. But we're going through a lot of food right now. I wanted to ask you, when you wash silverware, do you put your heads in outside of sharp knives? Because I think that's its own category of thing. Um, do you put your heads in heads up or heads down in the dishwasher? I'm really curious because it's one of those things that I don't think makes the biggest difference in the world, but at the same time, people are so passionate about it. So I want to hear from you. What do you think about that question? And at the end of the show, I'm doing some polling. Again, if you follow me on Twitter or you know me on Discord or any of the group chats I'm in, you may see a poll from me on occasion. I polled some of my friends, and you'll find out of the 34-person sample size that I have, who picks what. So let's get into the actual basketball of the day. Nikola Jokic is hurt. I hate that. I'm sure you hate that. The world hates that. But on the bright side, we are seemingly only talking about a hyperextension. So what that means is rather than season ending, rather than an ACL, rather than something more serious, we're talking about 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, something in that range. And so it gives Denver a hope that he'll come back and that Denver can continue to press for a championship if they're in a position to upon his return. The question is, how do they get there? Let's talk about it. So, in terms of the implications, the biggest one I would say is just the size that Jokic provides that you're no longer going to have on the court. Now, for years, Denver has struggled to find backup center options, especially true five backup center options. And in this case, we're in luck because we have Jonas Valanciunas, a guy who has started most of his career, isn't too far removed from being a starter, and who I think has the capacity for more when asked for it. I think relative to what he's playing right now, he could play 25, 30 minutes and it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for him, except for this one way. I think it's a bit of a challenge with him in foul trouble. It doesn't matter when you're playing 15 minutes if you pick up 3, 4, 5 fouls. That's totally fine. Not a big deal. But when you are a starter and we do need you throughout the game, his foul rate is something I think he's going to have to rein in a little bit. But otherwise, I think Denver will be okay with him as a starter, and they can run a lot of the same actions. And I think shade it everything, I should say, not just it, but shade all the actions that they run a little bit more towards Jamal Murray, and they'll be okay. I have a lot of faith in that. Where there are some question marks are the depth. Behind him, Denver doesn't really have a true five option, and it'll be really interesting to see where they go from here. They have Zeke Naji, who I think a lot of fans, as well as myself, are skeptical of. He hasn't had a great year, even in terms of Zeke Naji. This is not his best year. At the same time, I don't think he's the worst Denver Nugget. It's actually Julian or maybe Hunter. So he's maybe he can be fine. That would be great. But I think Denver is also going to be looking for other options there. They have Deron Holmes, who hasn't seen the floor much this season. When he has seen the floor, I think he's shot the ball well, but otherwise not done too much. I think a big part of why he hasn't seen the floor is his recovery from the injury and being physically ready and capable of the kinds of burdens and workloads that he's going to experience on a night-to-night basis in the NBA with the travel, as well as just playing the games. So Can they cover what Denver needs? It's uncertain. However, I will give you a theory on where I think Denver can find some solace in this way is with them together. I feel like Holmes and Najee together, they have some strengths, they have some weaknesses, each of them, but together they can be complementary in a way that might be palatable. Holmes, I think he has a lot of questions physically in terms of just the physicality of the game, but I think he's a much more skilled player, a more cerebral player, a better shooter from the mid range and from deep. And Zeke, I think, has had the time in the league with the NBA training programs to develop the body that you need to kind of endure all of what you will on a night to night basis, right? So together, they can kind of have a complementary experience where defensively, Zeke takes on the de facto five role, and offensively, Holmes takes on that role where Duran is the one you're playing through off the bench. He's the one you're running pick and rolls with, pick and pops with, DHOs with, hitting him at the high post, letting him make decisions. And Zeke, I think, can do what he does best in terms of being an ancillary piece who stays out of the way, who doesn't need to do too much, and just focus on taking and making those open threes when they come, playing the dunker, converting those dump offs when they arrive, and focusing saving that energy for the defensive end for the rebounding battle, where while he has been pretty insufficient on his own, I think he's been more palatable next to other bigs. So next to Valanciunas, he doesn't seem so undersized because they can collaborate on the boards, right? And I think that's going to be the big thing is when you lack a backup center, what you really lose, most importantly, in my opinion, is how do you close possessions defensively? So between Zeke and Holmes, it's possible they can cover that, but we'll have to see. Now, when we're talking about options outside the roster, there's a few different ways they could go. Obviously, they could explore the trade market, they could explore the buyout market. I also think a guy, Moses Brown, who you may remember from Summer League, from preseason, as a guy who's down with the G League right now. And I think he was solid, not overly impressive, but solid. And he's over 7 feet tall, 7'2", I believe, and could be someone they bring in on a 10-day contract. I believe those are legal within the next couple of weeks. So there may be a period of time where they have to survive even until then. But that does give them the chance to try out what they have in something that's quick and palatable that they can go to see if maybe that works for them. Another thing that I think might help them a lot coming in the next couple of weeks is the return of Aaron Gordon, right? He's been out for a while. The signs are pointing to him being eligible to return within sometime in the near future. I don't have an exact date. But I think that would also be a boon to the team in terms of what I'm going to talk about in the next segment and on the boards in terms of the physicality, in terms of contending with some of the larger players Denver is going to see, especially going on an Eastern Conference road trip where there are a lot of opposing fives that they'll have to contend with. So shifting gears a little bit to the other thing I think Denver is going to have to overcome in Jokic's absence, and I think it's going to be the more important thing to their success in terms of winning or losing games, is the offensive leadership, particularly in terms of generating paint touches and creating and initiating contact, drawing fouls, creating those opportunities for themselves and others. I think that's the thing that Jokic will be missed the most for. So how do they handle that? We're talking Jamal Murray's had a great year. And I'm not saying I doubt Jamal can step it up to an even higher degree, but I think that he's only one man. This is going to be a really interesting challenge for him because he has to both continue to be aggressive as a scorer, but take on an even larger burden as not just a initiator, but as the primary playmaker, as the person who it's going to be on him to be near triple doubles on a nightly basis now. And I think that is both a challenge, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for him. And it's really going to give him the chance to cement his campaign for an all star berth. So it is an exciting time for Jamal Murray. Not an exciting time. I think that's maybe the wrong word to use, but certainly an opportunity for him to prove himself as one of the best in the league, especially compared to his peers. This is the first time in his career that you can look around at his contemporaries and the players that he gets compared to. Michael Porter, it's the first time he's had a team to himself, and the Nets have, to some degree, shown a lot of progress. In comparing him to some of the other guys who are more natural comparisons to him, not just because they're on the same team, but positionally, talking about guys like Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, he'll have the opportunity to prove that, hey, this isn't just something that I do because Jokic is next to me. This is something I do because this is really how good I am and how much better I am or not than you guys. So the Murray watch will be real over the next month. I think that's absolutely true. And, one of the things that, along with Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown's return will provide is that same kind of rim pressure, the ability to get into the paint. One of the things I wanted to podcast about, as opposed to Jokic being hurt this week, was that I've been thinking about one of the reasons that Denver seems to struggle so much in closing games this year, even in games that they're winning, win or lose. It seems to me like Denver becomes a little too complacent offensively in terms of settling for jump shots, both for threes and for mid-range shots. When faced with a lot of ball pressure, when faced with defensive force, both at the rim and then related to that, hard closeouts, it feels like down the stretch of these games that Denver takes the foot off their gas most critically in terms of getting downhill, getting to the rim, and drawing fouls. I think about the Timberwolves game a couple of weeks ago. It feels like a couple weeks ago, but I think it was not too long ago, actually, maybe just a week. But that game went to overtime, mostly, in my opinion, because they couldn't foul out Rudy Gobert. He went into the fourth quarter, I believe, with 5 fouls and made it through the entire rest of that game. Only until overtime did he actually foul out. And I think that prolonged that game being competitive in a big, meaningful way. Jokic usually takes on a lot of that responsibility to be the one who's going to say, I'm going to put my head down, I'm going to get to the basket, and I'm going to earn fouls. Because and the impact that has is that it keeps the game at a pace that is comfortable for Denver, where especially when you're up in these games, you're in control. It gives you time to focus and rest for the defensive end. It gives you, it puts the opposing defenses in compromised positions because they're in foul trouble. And it eventually ends their ability to win games because key players are fouling out, right? If you can foul out a Rudy Gobert, the sooner you can, the sooner that game ends. That's the bottom line to me. And so I think Denver needs to make it a point of emphasis to be a lot more aggressive in getting to the rim, especially in Jokic's absence. And I wanted to say that while he was playing, but I think it's doubly true while he's not. And to that end, not just Jamal, not just Aaron Gordon, not just Christian Brown, but I think 3 players in mind are who I'm thinking about as who could have strong months, coming up in January that would go a long way to Denver's success. I think about Peyton Watson as a guy who He has the quickness, the athleticism to get by his man and to attack the rim in a way that's effective. I think Julian Strother as well, even though I think he's having one of the worst years among players who are in the rotation for Denver. I do give him some grace because of the injury, and I have some optimism that as he returns to form, one of the best things he was able to do is have some shiftiness, have some quickness, have that ability to get to the rim off the dribble. And in this context, in a Jokic-less context, that's so important. That's going to be so important. And through a different avenue, I think something that's going to be a little bit more Jamal Murray esque in the sense that it's about footwork and control and managing leverage and controlling the game in that way, I think is Jalen Pickett. He, I think, is having a stronger stretch, over the last month or two, and I think it's been with him trying to fit in without doing too much, especially the way he goes to his post game. I think that's been something he's tried to curtail. But at the same time, with Jokic gone, I actually think there could be a use case for him as a more primary option, using his strength, his post footwork, that sort of skill set that he definitely has to create opportunities not only for himself, but for others, along with Jamal Murray. Now, here's probably where I'm going to end off, and before I let you go, is the defensive intensity. I think is going to be what really carries them through this time. I will admit, Jokic is one of the worst linchpins defensively on the team. There's so much work the team has to do around him because of what he is allowing defensively. All the switching he's not going to do, all the coverage and space that he's not going to do. I think it makes it so that the players have to do a lot more to make up for him. And it's why I'm such a big advocate for surrounding him with players who are not only smart, but also who have the athleticism and the explosiveness to kind of make up for that extra ground, right, in these rotations. So without him, you might not have, and also I don't want to say that this means Jokic is a bad player or even intrinsically a bad defender. I think part of that is that he carries such a burden offensively when you're talking about putting up 50-point triple doubles, 30 points a night. He's doing so much. And it's such a long season that you can only expect so much from one person, especially for a big man in his 30s. But in his absence, I think this is a great opportunity for Denver to establish a real defensive identity, especially as you get Christian Brown back, as you get Aaron Gordon back, and you don't have the same limitations in every lineup in terms of the rotations and things like that. You can apply real ball pressure, knowing that if you can put together a unit that has a Bruce Brown, a Christian Brown, an Aaron Gordon, a Peyton Watson, a Spencer Jones, all these guys are plus defenders. And I really believe in them, maybe not to put up 130 tonight, but maybe to get a few more Munders here and there. That's where I think Denver's really going to have to hang their hat if they're going to make it through this stretch and come out of it with Jokic returning to a team that's not in the 10th seed, in the 8th seed, whatever it might be, in the play-in. So that's about it. If you like this format, I am looking to do more of these going forward into 2026. So any support you have is appreciated. Like I said, you can follow me online at Rayvon Hackshaw. You can find the podcast at Nuggets Wave on YouTube and on podcast platforms. And the data for the question I answered at the beginning. So, in the dishwasher, do you put your silverware heads up or heads down? The winner is heads up. Most people I asked do their silverware heads up. Sorry to the heads down people. I know you're passionate. I can hear your disdain through the internet, through the ether. I feel it. I myself am a heads up person, and here's why. I will say I'm not a fan of crowding the bottom of the case. If you have a bunch of spoons and knives and forks all together at the bottom of the case, alternating, I think, is not that bad because it kind of provides more room on both sides for them not to be blocking each other. But that's just the thing is I don't want to block the utensils from one another. Um, Counterpoint, I think a lot of people are concerned about grabbing the heads of silverware. Counterpoint, wash your hands, use gloves. I don't know why you have dirty hands when you're putting away your silverware utensils. And if you really feel that strongly, a follow up, when was the last time you cleaned the container that you put your silverware in? Because if that's really a concern, I think that's something you might want to follow up on. It's not something we do all the time, totally understandable. Those are just my thoughts on that. And as numerically is 24-10, so 71% people heads up, 29% people heads down. No hard feelings either way. I'm just I just love a good I love a good debate. But yeah, drop a comment about where you put your silverware and how you orient it. And or if you have any thoughts about how the Nuggets can make it through this stretch, also let me know. I really appreciate that. And yeah, any support you can give. This has been Ray and Denver Nuggets forever.